Hello, I'm Rhonda Kitchens, your librarian at the William Benani Library at Big Bend Community College. You can always reach out to me in person, via chat, or through my email. Not all of these videos are going to be on this video. I'm going to have some separate so that you could just go to the ones that you need to look at. But I am going to talk about ThemeLink sort of as an overview as part of your assignment because we're going to need to find a scholarly article. I'm going to need to make sure you know what that is, what the sections of a research article will be, and I'm going to put an R in there. Also, I'm going to lightly go over quantitative versus qualitative methods. There's some things I believe you'll be going over in your class. If you don't, and if you want some further information about different things like empirical, observational, experiential type items, please reach out to me and I will absolutely cover it with you. Remember, I can be reached via chat, I can do a Zoom, or you could come to the library in person and talk to me. I will also go over the anatomy of a scholarly research article. My purpose here is to make sure I connect you to the things that will help you with your ThemeLink assignment. Next, I'll go over the search strategy. Your professor has provided some of the search terms. I'm going to show you how you might use those better. While we have over 100 databases, I'm going to focus on one because it has a lot of powerful uses for this particular project, and I think you're going to enjoy it. One of the greatest things about the Proquest database is even should you leave here and you move on to another college, and then you get your master's degree, and then you're working on your dissertation for your PhD, Proquest is the type of database you'll use all the way through your academic career. I will also talk a little bit about permanent URL, screen capture, and Google Sites, but those videos will be separate and other places in case you need to understand them. Because essentially what you'll do is find a scholarly article that's a research article that has the sections, specifically a methodology that you can use to screenshot and add onto it the way that ThemeLink does, and I will give you some examples. And as part of building your Google site, which will be using the embed code from the ThemeLink, you'll want to also add the permanent URL just so that your professor can figure out what you're working on as you'll be presenting it in parts. And I hope that sort of makes sense, and if not, I guess you know now where to find me. So this is from your actual assignment. It may have changed by the time you read this. So always ask your instructor and professor for more specific information. But you're going to need to find the scholarly article that has a methodology and shows you the type of experiment where you can identify independent variables and other types of things that are on your assignment pieces. What you'll be doing is taking pictures of that PDF and augmenting it with an explanation of how it fits all these different things. And that's how you'll be using ThemeLink. Now, what is a scholarly article? Well, it's actually a lot of things. One of the biggest things is not anything in a scholarly journal. A scholarly journal can have things like my first day on the job, this is a great book review, a letter to the editor can be multiple pages and have a long bibliography and multiple authors, but it's not going to have the shape and form of the research article we're going to be talking about. It can also be a systematic review, a literature review, all types of different things that you would also be able to use for different types of scholarly academic research, but not for this assignment. We're going to look for a specific one. You're probably familiar with some of the popular sources, and those are very easy to read. Sometimes you can find them rapidly and notice that they have multiple places they refer to. You're not sure who the author belongs to or who's writing it or what their authority may be. And a lot of the things about it, at the end of the day, you'll go, this is very easy to read. But has it provided you with the information you need for this project? No. Trade publications are also awesome. They kind of tell you practical day-to-day things. How to set up for a sale. How to do a process you never knew how to do before. How there's a new thing in the market that may change the way you look at doing certain things. In terms of, say, education, it might tell you like how to run a class, like how to do an assignment, but it's not going to tell you if that assignment worked, if it was tested, if it was run on a sample group of a population of students. It's going to go, I did this and it was awesome. Maybe you'd like to do it too. Also great information, but not for this project. one of the big things you do in terms of looking for a scholarly article, you go to a place that indexes and has scholarly journals. Now again, not every piece of information in a scholarly journal is a scholarly article. We do have databases where you can select for peer review in scholarly articles, but it actually says journals. So be aware, you're still going to have to make sure the title, the authors, the abstract, method, background purpose, significance of research, findings, conclusions, and references are sections that are in the piece that you find. Now, this anatomy of a scholarly article is going to be more research specific. A systematic review, a literature review, and some other things may not have this form. But in order to complete this assignment, you're going to need this particular kind. And in most cases, a lot of times, especially when you work in healthcare and other areas, when they say scholarly article, they mean this particular type. And if you have any questions, always ask the person who's going to be grading your paper. But in this case, you're really going to need to dig into the methodology, the things they do, what they included, excluded, added, variables, independent and otherwise. And if you don't have a methodology section, it's not going to work out for you. So let's make sure we do this. Now let's talk about the title. The title oftentimes will be something that might be in a professional language. It's a little bit more difficult to read, but that's just in your first immediate years. Trust me, as time goes on, you're going to learn how to read these things beautifully. Practice makes more perfect. We'll go with that. You're going to have multiple authors. Now, a scholarly article is going to be a beautiful piece of transparency. And for this assignment, you're going to really explore why. In a way, should you have the grants, the money, and the people, you should be able to replicate this particular experiment and get the same or very similar results. And they put all the information out there for you to do, how they do the math, what sort of things they included. Again, excluded. They will identify their population that they want to observe and then break it down to a sample they could actually pull into the piece to do their experiments. It's going to have authors that you can identify. Usually it's going to have more than one. They're going to tell you who they're involved with, and oftentimes they'll also let you know whether or not there's an ethics issue or if they were involved in something that they're making money for, that they're also promoting in this piece. And you will find sometimes that is often something that will happen. The abstract is going to be a summary. Always beware when you're working with academic research, you read the whole real full text thing. A summary of a summary is not really what you're going for here. You want to read all the pieces of methodology and so forth. It is a good indicator in many cases whether or not it may be the type of article, have the topics that you really would like to see in there. Sometimes you can use it to harvest out other keywords to do your research. It has a lot of value, but only if you proceed to the full text. Then after the abstract, usually you'll have an introduction section. This introduction section is usually what the authors and researchers have read in order to have written this idea, come up with their hypothesis, and kind of build their statement and the thing that they're trying to accomplish. These are things we've read. This is what happened here. This is what happened with these people. Based on all these things, we have decided to do the following. Now those are very easy to read pieces. That's like probably one of the easier to read parts of the scholarly article. But these are secondary sources. It's not the actual research. It's what the research the authors did to do the research. It's important, but it's not immediate and primary information. It is secondary information from other sources that they've pulled in and quoted in this piece. So it doesn't have the context and the original piece in it. If you want to read those, go back and find those and read them thoroughly. Now, from there, a lot of things could happen. But the methodology, methods, is going to tell you many, many things. Who was included, excluded, the population identified, and the population could also be of things, not necessarily people. Ideas and objects. Also, it's going to tell you who they included, what they're measuring against, what they're measuring for, how they're measuring, and it's going to show you all of the work. When you're working on the piece for ThingLink, one of the things you're going to be really looking for to show, you're going to find the method section and you're going to screen capture that section and go over and explain the pieces. Now from there, things can be a little bit different. Sometimes, I do love the ones that do provide background purpose and significance of the research. That might help you with your ThingLink piece as well and establishing what the research is about. Additionally, you'll have something, findings and conclusions. Findings is not always there, and sometimes it's also called or may be entitled limitations. Research doesn't always come out the way it may have been expected to come out. And that is still a process, and that's a part of the scientific method. And it's awesome, and a lot of times you're going to find it more often in findings and limitations. Also, while they may have said in the method they were going to use 100 people, into the findings and conclusions, you may not find out they only had 10. So be aware that all these pieces do depend on each other, kind of like the planning of what happened, what we're going to prove, how we did it, what really happened. Think of it that way. All of these pieces are very valuable in this project. The conclusion should be in almost every one of them. Sometimes it's very brief, but it is the author's real words. It is the author telling you what happened in terms of their hypothesis, their expectations, and where they're going to go with it. Sometimes they will tell you our next look will be at people need to study and research more over in this area than that. It's got a lot of information in it that's very useful. So next, you're going to have at the end references. If you have time to read them or feel motivated, those are the pieces that are often in the introduction, and sometimes in a good database like Proquest, they're actually linked. So these are the sections you'll need to find in a scholarly article, and we're going to look at what that looks like in real life as we go further, and we're going to look at Proquest. I'm going to say that's the best possible database for this project. When you're looking at the methodology and how the particular research is put together, there are two main types of methods that will be used, quantitative and qualitative. If you're trying to figure out how to remember quantitative, think of quantity. It's going to help you remember this has something to do with numbers. It collects and analyzes numerical data. The approach is to test theories and assumptions. Mainly, this is probably what you're going to want to use for this project. The methods are experiments, sampling, data collection, data analysis. Qualitative are going to be sometimes more observational. That is, they're going to be flexible and open-ended. They might have a focus on behavior, emotions, open-ended questions, diary studies, focus groups, user feedback, interviews, and things of that nature. And sometimes you'll see them together, and those really are quite awesome pieces. They're called mixed methods. And there's several other names and ideas behind the research, but these are the ones I want to put out there to you because you can actually do research with keywords when you're looking for quantitative, and guess what? You can use quantitative as part of your keywords, and oftentimes it'll help you find something awesome, especially if you're struggling a little bit about these two pieces. I want you to know here, as you're working on this, this is like a frequently asked question of a librarian. And I mean today, me, when you're at Harvard, when you're working on dissertation, is this a qualitative or quantitative article, or is this even a scholarly article? These are legit questions to talk to your librarian about. We hear them all the time. Sometimes we really have to be just like you, kind of sit back and like, look at this. And then we'll go through the pieces and we'll figure it out together. So if this is confusing right now, that's okay. Ask about it. Ask me, ask your professor. And this is a really great conversation to have. And it's expected. Let's talk about it when you see confusing things in research. It's important. Another good thing to have, in addition to knowing what you're looking for, we're looking for a scholarly article. We're looking for something that shows the experiment that has its methodology and has all the different parts. So we know that is key to our research. But additionally, you're looking for a topic. How are we going to manage this? Words have different endings, different meanings. How do I put them together? And these are the top 3 pieces that I use every single time. Yes, actually I use them every week, sometimes multiple times a day. So there are others, but these are the 3 most important ones. I'm going to show you this general piece and something more specific to do with the keywords you have to work with. First of all, truncation. You're going to use truncation when you need to get more out of a word. Suppose you have a word that has alternate endings, trauma, traumatizing, things of that nature, but you don't want to have to search 4 times, 3 times to keep looking for it. You go to the most common place before the suffix is kicked in. You'll see here it's after the S, and you put an asterisk there. Trauma, You look for the most common place they end, put the asterisk there. So if you do this search in Proquest, it'll come up with drama, traumatic, traumatizing, traumatized as well, and a few probably I haven't thought of. But this is really great when you have a word that has multiple endings that are used a great deal as well, and might keep you out of some particular article over another. Phrase searching is really important for your work here because you have a lot of phrases. Now these phrases are not unnatural, these are naturally occurring phrases like climate change or global warming or displaced workers. These are very specific things you want, and you put them in actual quotes. And the reason you do this so it searches together as a phrase. And this is going to improve your search results and take out things that don't matter as much for you. So this gets rid of some things out of your search. Boolean searching you kind of have been doing more or less logically using Google to some degree. But when you're going into some of the databases, you may do it in a more practical way because they have it built so you can add things together using and or not. Now, and means you're going to search for two things. So if you were looking for global and capital A-N-D and warming, your search results would be the blue area where they overlap. Suppose you were looking for global warming or climate change, and that's a perfectly good use for or because it keeps things together like synonyms. Like if you have a word that has different meanings or it's a phrase that was used at different times in different places, but you want to search them all at one time, you don't have to go through them all, this is the way you do it. You would use or. Now, if you were doing global warming but you did not want to deal with air pollution, you would go not air pollution, global warming, not air pollution, or not whatever is messing up your thing. And this is when you're having, you look at your search results and you're like, why is this even in here? And this will help you get rid of it. And that will tune up your search a great deal. So you kind of improve, and really improve using these three. Now, sometimes when I go into a search, I don't go in with these, but I start working with them as I go on, as I start seeing how things look. Now let me show you how this looks with some of the items that you've been given in this assignment. Search strategy examples. So you'll see here when I am going to look for environmental science, say in Proquest, and this also works for Google by the way, or EBSCO or any of our other services, I'm going to put it in quotes so it finds them together. If I'm looking for sustainable, I'm like, that's a great word, but you know what? It's used in different ways. I will go to the point. Actually, I'm going to put an L there. I love correcting these as I go along. But you'll see everything ends with an L, so that I will get sustainable, sustainability, as well as some other words that might be appropriate in that area. I'll put environmental ethics or ethic in quotations. I would put circular economic system in quotes to make sure it comes out together because it is a phrase. Incinerators, I would go back and take the asterisk to the T so I could get incineration, incinerating, and incinerates. All may show up in the research. Recycling, I would like to have recycle, recycles, recycling, and recycled. I would just have to put the asterisk after the L, and then it will search for the other suffixes. And I'm going to put recycled here. Hazardous waste, if you search with it hazardous waste without the quotes, it might have hazardous in the title, waste in the final paragraph. That's essentially what you're doing. You're trying to find things that have the most to do with what you're really searching for. And you'll see here I broke down compost as well. So I'm showing here a Boolean search. So I put environmental ethics in quotes and also sanitary landfills. In Proquest, I'll be able to use this as a drop-down box. If you're using other places, you may have to use the capitalized A and D. This also, again, works in Google and Google Scholar. Google Advanced actually has a special place for it. But what this does, if you'll see my search, I have composting, sanitary landfills, and things of that nature. I think what I did here, we're going to bring this back. It was this, compost, with an asterisk. And I'm going to put that back in. So, this in a way is how I keep changing my searches. But you see, sometimes it has unintentional things, like I think there's like a sanitary ends it and landfills begins, composting plants, and I may want it to be composting something else. These are all different ways to do your research. And this, when you see the multiple things that are highlighted, is going to bring it higher in the relevance so that you don't have to go to the 50th or 60th item, that you might be able to rapidly bring this particular search to an end and find some excellent materials quicker. So I hope that makes sense, because these are actually things that I use weekly, and you will too in your academic research life. As a librarian, I find myself saying database a lot, like database, database, database. Not sure what'll ever pop out of the computer screen, but guess what? It's really a very fancy word for something that you're already doing every day in terms of searching and using a database, because you're using Netflix. That's right, you're using a search to find digital records on an online item. That's right. Netflix has lots of things. In fact, some of our databases have Netflix-like qualities. You know how it remembers where you were and remembers what you searched? You notice when you see one movie, it says, hey, you like this. You may also like this other. And it presents things to you to help you along with your research. Or your database may be like a Hulu, and it may be hard to get around. You're not quite understanding what it is, and you're like, why did this particular search come up? Or like Pluto, which is very difficult. It's a little bit more like Google, like so many things going on at one time. But between these, you'll find your Amazon Prime, Netflix type objects, and you'll probably kind of use them for a very long time. And when we talk about databases in the library, we'll talk about mostly like Gale Resources, Proquest, EBSCOhost, so we'll talk about Ex Libris, and we're going to be using Proquest for this particular piece. And again, the reason I would like you to use it, because this is the particular database publisher that's going to follow you throughout your academic research lifespan, and it just won't help you with this class but others. We're going to be using the cross-disciplinary version of it, so you'll be able to access more things from different places. So you might get some things from, say, a social sciences journal as well as an environmental waste product journal. So you'll have a lot of richness to work with. I'm not going to go over these particular slides because I'm going to put them on a website so that you can use them as you need them. These are going to be part of the pieces that support your project. So this is going to show you how to get a permanent online link to your particular article that you use. Not all of us know about screen capture and how to do it, so I have all these little links, and I'm going to make sure that's where you could get to it on the main class guide page. As always, if you do not understand these things, make an appointment, because these are skills that you'll be able to use for other courses, your real life, and other things. So I want to make sure that you understand how to do it. And finally, once you do your thing link, you're going to get an embed, and you're going to add the embeds to a Google site. You may or may not have a Google email at this point, but you will need one to build a Google site. As most of you know, they are free. And it's really very easy to use. Actually, you may be stunned if you have not used it. In many cases, some of you are familiar. So I'll build the how-to video for those who are not. And again, if this makes you uncomfortable, it's not something you've done, you're not sure you can really learn it on a video, hey, come see me in person, by chat, email, whatever it takes, and we will talk about it. Now, we're at the 24-minute project, which means I'm at least 15 minutes past where the ideal video ends. But from here, I'm going to show you some really important things. We're about to go research Proquest. I'm at the bigbend.edu site. I'm going to go over here to academics. We see academics. There's going to be a drop down for the library right here. The library, this is how I kind of keep up with what's going on in the library. We're going to go to databases A to Z. And I'm going to go there because specifically when you're looking for a scholarly article, the best place to go is to a database. Remember, like Netflix, but we're using Proquest, and go to where you're going to be most likely able to find what you need without all the distractions, because the library catalog with the books, the reviews, all that has a lot of distractions. We're going to be looking for Proquest. We can make these two choices. We could go under P for Proquest, or under here I have put our most popular databases, and it's here. Now, remember when I was talking about chat? This is where the chat is if you want to find it. And it's also on the slide out page. Let me bring that over to the right hand side. On every page, Ask a Librarian will bring you in contact with a real librarian 24/7. No, I don't work here 24/7, but you might talk to a librarian from Australia or England. I help out people from those countries when their librarians are asleep. They may be very useful to you or not, but rest assured, I do go through and read the questions in the morning, and if I see that they answered something a little off, I will give you, I'll write you and see how you're doing, and I'll follow up with that. Or you can follow up with me, because I think you can tell. You can reach out to me anywhere. So I'm going to Proquest. Remember now, Proquest, this particular version, has a little bit of everything in it. And you see I'm starting here from the advanced page, and this is the cross-disciplinary, every piece we have thing. You'll see a lot of things going on. You'll see there's a lot of ways to make it very, very precise. I usually wait to the second page. So let me start with one of the topics. I'm going to use green consumerism. I put it in quotations so that it searches as a phrase. Here I'm going to use the and. These are the Boolean operators I was talking about that you could choose. You can also make changes to them as you go along. I like to go in pretty big, but I might put in ethics. But I want ethic, ethics, ethical. So I'm going to put ethic and this particular thing. I also want to make sure that I search full text. I'll leave the dates open. I'm going to select for peer reviewed. Now I'm going to go in to do the search. So from here I have my search results. I have 814. That's I think a respectable amount. I see this is, I'm going to also select for scholarly journals. But you can see there's other options also available to me, and that narrowed it down. And I just want to point this out because sometimes you may think that selecting for a scholarly journal gets you a scholarly article, and it does not. Remember, there's book reviews, letters to the editor, tremendous amounts of information in there. My first day on the job. And those are not going to be appropriate for this particular piece that you're working on. So this is going to get us closer, but I still have to look at the actual page. So I'm going to move this over. It's ethical consumerism. It does this, that, or the other thing. It's got 4 pages. I'm just going to give this a miss because that's really short. 9 pages, few further developments. That looks like very brief literature. This is over 10 pages. It has one author, not multiple authors, and it's inside historical international relations. That looks like it may not be a review of something or a reframing of some other literature, so I'm going to do it. You can also do the quick look. Issue 1, multiple authors among students, a survey in campus. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to the PDF full text first. The reason I do that is because what you see is what you get, and it's going to help me see the pieces. I see that I have an abstract. I have multiple authors. I see who they are, who they're connected to, and how to reach them. That's a great level of transparency. This abstract, again, I need to read the whole thing not to use this, but I can use it to eliminate something that just doesn't fit based on what I'm working on. This will or will not fit. The introduction is where they use other people's words. So when you see these are references. They're secondary sources. This is not where the authors and researchers are absolutely speaking at. They're telling you what they've done. But in here, you will find the hypothesis. The purpose of this study is to see the extent, etc. So this particular piece you might want to do a screen capture of if it addresses part of the things that you need to do. And this one you might get a 2-for-1 and be able to tag this and the method. This research was conducted. It took place at. The method used was. These were the things that happened. We used simple random sampling. It was about students, but our sample size was 130 students, specifically from these particular 2 programs, blah, blah, blah. And it gives all their information. So you'll see through these pieces, the authors and researchers are talking to you about what they're doing, why they're doing it, what the variables and other issues are involved into it. This doesn't have the limitations and other pieces to it. It just has a very brief and tight conclusion. So in your thing link piece, the conclusion part may be one of the things you highlight and describe in your project. And then we have here references that you can look at and use other things of. And that may or may not be enough information for you to use, but it does have the appropriate format. But it looks like it's going to be more qualitative in nature than quantitative. Nope, here we go. Aspects of the students and how we talk to them. Okay, so yeah, it does veer into the quantitative area. So it's brief. It may not be enough for you to work with. While you're in Proquest, remember Netflix? Suggested sources. So if this didn't really work out for you, you might want to just go through to see if these other pieces might as well. And you might also, when you see the bold piece, this is a journal marketing development. So you might be unsure if that would work for your piece, but this is from sustainability, a journal on. So that might be something more that you would like to use. This one is from consumer affairs. This is from a business journal. So based on what you're working on, you may select one over the other. And this also kind of gives you a little bit more ways of looking at it in different ways if you like to have a little bit more images there in the view all. You can go through them all where they're not just a bunch of lines of text. Now, while you're here, suppose this is the one that you've chosen. Well, over here where the dot 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 is, you can bring this up and you can copy this particular URL. And I would keep it with your piece because this is the direct link to the full text of your item. And inside of your project, you'll be showing pieces of it. So this would be a good thing to use. Also, if you're going to cite your piece, you're going to go over here to the quotation mark. See the cite piece? And you're going to go to whichever one you're using, MLA or APA. And the rule here is to copy and correct it, but at least you'll have the authors and other things in full. This one is actually mostly correct, except if it was in references, it would be double space, but it has a lot of goodness in it, so this one would be an awesome one to do. So I'm going to take you through one more time to look at some other things. I have found in my use of Proquest, sometimes the first 10 are not really the best. So I'm going through it again. I'm looking for page numbers, I'm looking at journal titles and the number of authors, trying to figure out whether or not it will be good for me. I see this is 20 pages. This is an interesting topic. So Women's Studies Quarterly, and it must be sort of like in the area of social sciences and green consumerism, which may or may not be useful to your piece. Again, I would go straight to the full text, make sure it has a methodology that's detailed and will help you out with this project. Classification in Northern Ireland, Taiwan's resource sustainability, perceptions of university students. That may or may not be qualitative, but you'd have to look at the methodology to see. Behavioral economic approach, demand for reusable shopping bags. Let's go in and look at that. It's 10 pages long. It has multiple authors. It's behavior and social issues. And we're going to kind of go through and look for the pieces. And yes, it has multiple authors. We know who they are. We have an introduction. It says what they read. It has a method. It talks about some participants and setting. And it's talking about a hypothetical purchase task. So it's setting up the experiment. And it's going to show you the analysis, their work, results in discussion, which is often sometimes something not like limitations, but it will come up in advance of the conclusion, which here is not as clearly delineated as it is in other places. There is a way that an APA and other things where you can use various headings, but you're looking for the thing that does a conclusion in this case. So if you're working on a thing link and you wanted to talk about things to bring out into it. You might look for the hypothesis, the thing that's driving them, why they're doing the research, talk about their method, the independent variables, and you would be able to tag these sections and talk about what's in them and what they do in terms of your research. And again, I will be sharing how to do a thing link. I'll be sharing how to do a screen capture. I'll be sharing how to find the URL for this particular piece so you could put in there, and how to build, and very rapidly by the way, a Google site project so you can contain all your information in one beautiful, lovely place. So this went up to 35 minutes. If you're still here, as you know, reach out to me if you need help. I hope that I put this all into a way that you can find it with like a little bit of a tables of content. But remember, always, if not, reach out to your librarian or librarians. We'll be glad to help you out with this project. In fact, we're a little bit excited about it. So I hope I see you soon. And this is Rhonda, your librarian.